Welcome to the news at 10. Police are removing some of the belongings still inside the home in Moscow where 4 University of Idaho students were killed last month. Police are returning the belongings to the victims' families this week. Those families, as we know, still do not have answers on who murdered their children.
Moscow police still believe this was a targeted attack, but haven't said if the target was the house or the victims inside. They also don't have a suspect or a person of interest named. Abby Davis spoke with a U of I professor earlier today about why police hold on to information like this, keep it close to their vests. Abby?
Brennan Morgan, Samuel Newton's been a criminal law professor at U of I for 4 years. He's worked on several high-profile cases. Newton says murder cases take time, and that patience is key.
It's been more than 3 weeks since Ethan Chapin, Xana Kernodle, Madison Mogen, and Kaylee Gonzalez were stabbed to death in a home just off the U of I campus. On Wednesday, police will return some of the victims' belongings to their families.
They've asked for some of those things back.
In a pre-recorded video from the Moscow Police Department, Chief James Fry said they worked with the families to get items that are no longer needed in the investigation.
It's time for us to get those things back that really mean something to those families and hopefully to help with some of their healing.
But for many, healing feels far away, with no suspect or person of interest identified. U of I criminal law professor Samuel Newton
Patience is an important word.
Says murder cases take time.
If the police are so hasty to kind of get a result that the public is clamoring for, give us a suspect, they may, if they charge the wrong person who ends up getting convicted, what that does is creates 2 injustices. We want them to make sure that they have all the evidence they need in order to ensure a conviction.
Because many people don't have that patience, some fill the void with rumors, speculation, and even misinformation.
People are well-meaning, well-intentioned, but they are flooding the police with information. Now, to the police, any tip could potentially be a break in the case, and so they have to look at everything.
He says it can be overwhelming.
It becomes maybe finding the needle in the haystack as opposed to if they were conducting a normal criminal investigation.
Police don't want to release any sort of information that could potentially hinder the investigation. Could you explain to people why police are being so tight-lipped?
Let's just imagine that the police know who their suspect is. They don't necessarily want to tip off their suspect and say, we know who you are, we've gathered this amount of evidence against you, because if that person knows how strong the case is, they may be gone, they may be out of there.
The worst case scenario,
they just don't know, and they don't want to also tip off a potential suspect or the person who did it that they have no clue, and that can embolden the real killer or killers to know that police have no ideas.
For these reasons, Newton says it's necessary police don't release certain info to the public.
Later, they can go to a suspect and use it to leverage. Oh, look how strong this case is against you, and then the person feels the weight of that and confesses.
When the killer is brought into custody, Newton says under Idaho law, they could face the death penalty or life in prison. Brennan Morgan without parole.
All right, Abby, thank you. As you guys heard in Abby's story, she used a soundbite from the police chief up in Moscow. That soundbite was from a YouTube video about 1.5 minutes long that they posted earlier today. This is the first time we've seen Moscow PD post a YouTube video with sort of a canned response. We weren't able to ask any questions.
Right, these taped and delivered kind of interviews, we don't commonly use them because of that, because our job is to ask questions.
Right.
And so we don't want to be a conduit for any sort of controlled messaging out there. We do this when it comes to politicians and businesses and such. But we kind of take these on a case-by-case basis as well, because this situation is unique. We're only getting so much information coming out of there, and so we're going to kind of take these. They're supposed to be releasing, not many, but they're going to release these as needed, and we're going to take them on a case-by-case basis based on relevance and whether or not they have any value.
Yeah, sort of a new medium that they're using, and it's important to note this did come with a press release as well. That press release sent out today came after a press release was sent yesterday, and as we've been reporting throughout this case, there wasn't a lot of information initially off the bat from Moscow Police. Idaho State Police stepped in with a public information officer team. They've now been putting out press releases and Facebook posts every day, pretty consistently, not every day, but pretty often. They also held a couple press conferences, but I was told last week when we were up in Moscow that they aren't going to hold those press conferences very frequently because they didn't have any significant updates to give, so they had some pushback on those.
They'll be communicative when they can.
Exactly.
All right.